Well, good morning, America. We interrupt your morning news feed for some real news. The Biden administration has once again delayed the release of JFK assassination files until 2022. Why? Well, let's dig into the whole what the CIA has been doing over the past 70 years about with Operation Mockingbird and all kinds of other facts we're going to talk about today that you won't hear from any of your mainstream media. We already got some viewers popping in. Early birds, or is it just people up late from the Europe and overseas? Anyways, we're going to talk about one of the first things that happened. Oh, geez, it's Todd. Oh, I can't sleep. I don't know. I just woke up and I was like, I wanted to talk about. I had this dream about JFK, and I started looking up stuff on JFK, and wanted to talk about what I know about JFK and the assassination, and Lee Harvey Oswald, and some of the interesting things. But one of the interesting things is that the Zapruder film wasn't shown on national TV, and it wasn't shared for, I think, over a decade. I think it was maybe maybe even longer than that, until it was ever shared publicly. And the first time it was shown on television was, I think, like 20 years after the assassination. But instead, the public was given, they let a news reporter from Dallas tell the American public what they saw on the assassination tape. And this is what Dan Rather recounted. Dan Rather was a no-name, small-time news reporter in Dallas, and he became a CIA asset that day, undoubtedly. Check this out.
The president leaned over her way. It appeared that he might have brushed her legs. Mrs. Kennedy then literally went on the top of the trunk of the Lincoln car, put practically her whole body on the trunk. It appeared she might have been on her all fours there, reaching out for the Secret Service man, the lone Secret Service man who was riding on the bumper of the car. The back bumper on Mrs. Kennedy's side.
Right here, around 150.
Fell back in the seat. Mrs. Connolly immediately threw herself over him in a protective position. In the next instant, with this time Mrs. Kennedy apparently looking on, a second shot, the third total shot, hit the president's head. His head could be seen to move violently forward. And Mrs. Kennedy stood up immediately.
So at that moment, Dan Rather told the American public that, which indicated to any forensics expert that the shot came from behind his head. He told the American public that the head moved violently forward. And that's what he said he saw on the tape that he was shown, in the original copy of the Zapruder film, which was kept, was bought by, I think, Time Warner or something, and shelved for decades. I don't know. It was just never shown to the public. And there's been allegations of alteration, but this is the best quality version that we have. And it's quite disturbing. And we're going to watch this. This is not, this is one of the most disturbing pieces of footage ever shown on American television. Here's where the first shot happened, behind the Stemmons Freeway sign. He leans forward. Connolly turns around. Not struck yet. Connolly looks like he screams out in pain at this moment, like he's struck by a second bullet. And then Kennedy's head moves violently backward in the seat. His whole body lurches backward. So Dan Rather told the American public a lie.
Could be seen to move violently forward.
And The reality is that the head moved backward and to the left after the final headshot. Now, from an assassination perspective, it's important to go to Dealey Plaza, understand the confusion of everything that happened that day, watch the videos of the assassination afterwards, like the Nix film, right? Find JFK assassination, Nix film. At the end of the film, you can see all the people from the crowd chasing the assassinations across the train tracks and over into the train yard towards the grassy knoll.
Being here today.
I gotta find the Nix film. Here we go.
It's an event that Fullerton went on to present footage of.
I can't. I just need to find the raw footage. If anyone has a link to the Nix film of the JFK assassination, they make this stuff hard. Oh, here might be new versions. This might be it. At the very end of the Nix film, you can see everyone looking over towards the direction of the grassy knoll, the white picket fence that surrounded the grass at the end of the grassy knoll, the top of the grassy knoll, sorry. And this is the layout of Dealey Plaza. If we can go to Dealey Plaza. Aerial view. You can see that this was the school book depository building, I think, right here. Yeah, right here. And this is the 6th floor window that he supposedly shot from, or this one right here, the sniper's nest. But people saw shooters in both windows apparently, and there was also people that chased people on the grassy knoll towards the train tracks. And then later in the day, these three tramps were arrested in the train yard. I think I have a thing on the 3 tramps and their identities on my JFK assassination. Yeah, these tramps were very interesting. These guys were walking around, and actually they were sitting in an abandoned train car that was about to leave the area, and they brought them in, and they looked like E. Howard Hunt, Frank Sturgis, and this other guy's been identified as 2 other people, but Woody Harrelson said it was his dad, or Woody Harrelson's dad said that it was him or something. That was another theory about the 3rd tramp. But anyways, these guys were found in the train yard out behind there, and all kinds of other interesting things, like we'll start back, I think, with Lee Harvey Oswald and getting into Lee Harvey Oswald's background of how he got that job at the school book depository building and the people that he was living with and introduced to and associating with just prior to the assassination. And it's quite interesting, the web of people that you find in the background behind all this. But there's lots of, I don't know, I wish we could make one of those maps where with all the dots and where the nodes are all the people that and names that you could bring up and do like a map of all these people and see how they connect, because it kind of goes back to this whole thing with Batista and Cuba. And during, late 1950s, Cold War was starting, and things were ramping up over these South American countries. Lots of, ramping up, I mean, lots of CIA operations to overthrow governments there. And there were a number of different units that I talk about on here. I start off with the whole Bay of Pigs thing and what the Bay of Pigs thing was about and what led up to the Bay of Pigs and some of these other secret organizations around the JM Wave facility, which was the CIA's Cuba operation. It started in southern Florida and trained a lot of groups in southern Florida under the guise of a company called Zenith Corporation. And Zenith Corporation was a big like CIA place, and they used to bring people out to guys out to the Everglades, and with cops would stop them, and they'd have rocket launchers and all kinds of crazy weapons and stuff, and they'd be like, we're from the CIA, once they knew they were from the CIA station, the cops left like people like that alone, because they trained all kinds of crazy stuff like that out there down in southern Florida back then. This is an interesting picture with a lot of interesting individuals that link up to modern day people, Porter Goss and Barry Seal, right next to each other. And that's quite interesting, because Porter Goss is he became director of the CIA, later on, and he's been a long time CIA guy who's goes back to this group of people that arranged the assassinations and stuff. And what it was is they teamed up with a lot of these organized crime members from the that fled Cuba, right? So a lot of these big organized crime guys were operating out of Cuba and all the casinos, because casinos in Cuba were like the big, money laundering. It was the rich. The rich used to have, they've been going to smaller and smaller like locales, like before Epstein's Island there was Cuba, and Cuba was long before that. But they had this was the riches, gang, one of the big gangsters. And then this guy, all these gangsters fled Cuba when and they came to the US, and instead of being watched, they were and they were kind of embraced by the CIA, because the CIA realized that these people had connections and ways of getting things done. And the CIA, and they also had lots of intelligence on the insides of Cuba and stuff that they shared. So a lot of these guys became CIA assets, and the CIA were teamed up with a lot of these thugs that would assassinate people and do. This guy killed many people for the mafia in America, and this is one of Bugs and Meyer mob. This is like a crime syndicate. And but the thing is, these guys had control of all the intelligence on the docks, and they had operation over the ports, and a lot of intelligence that back in there was a ship that was blown up, and they needed to, I forget what the name of the ship was, but it was prior to the JFK assassination in the in the 1950s. It was they figured it was espionage, and it happened because they were taking the mafia out of the ports, and they realized the mafia were better at running that kind of stuff than they were, and they kept a lot of the intelligence under wraps, because the way they operated was more efficient in some ways than what the CIA was trying to install and do. So they just teamed up with them because they had intelligence from Cuba, and there's a lot of interesting mafia connections and connections with the intelligence community, and how these people were teamed up together. But so there was theories that the mafia and organized crime, and then who's Jack Ruby? Jack Ruby's an interesting guy. Jack Ruby had all these ties to organized crime, and then what was his connection to? He had connections to both, he was a nightclub owner there, and then he also knew Nixon. He worked for Nixon which is an interesting connection. And then Nixon a whole bunch of presidents were converged on Dealey Plaza, strangely, future presidents. So George H.W. Bush, he was in Dallas, or at least he flew out of Fort Worth, into Fort Worth and out of Fort Worth, which is where the president flew in from. You know, he flew out in a private plane by a guy named Zeppa. If you look up Zeppa. And this is all in a book by an award-winning reporter named Russ Baker, and he did some investigations on some of this stuff and found some really amazing connections that Bush couldn't remember where he was that day, and then they said that they were on a plane by Mr. Zeppo, and then he figured out that it was Zeppa, that he changed it slightly to throw people off, and then said, "Oh, that's just me forgetting, the name." But yeah, anyways, there's some really interesting research there people can check out, but I think that Lee Harvey Oswald, I don't think that we'll talk about Lee Harvey Oswald and say what I know about him. Sorry, it's still early here. Lee Harvey Oswald is a really interesting guy. He was recruited into the Marines and at like age 17, and while he was in the Marines, he was with this guy named David Ferry, and David Ferry was a CIA agent and did a lot of work for the CIA. And so here they are together. There's Ferry, who was the I think he was the commander of the Civil Air Patrol, where Oswald was a member. And the Civil Air Patrol this was him before he went into the Marines. I think even it was like a junior squad that he took part in. And this guy, really interesting individual, talked about this whole organized office that was behind all this. If you really do deep JFK assassination research, you'll get into Clay Shaw. That's Clay Shaw right there. That's the Garrison trial and all that stuff. It was the movie JFK was based on a lot of the stuff that came up in the Garrison trial. So if you're not familiar with all that information with Guy Bannister and who Guy Bannister was and Guy Bannister's office, lots of deep assassination history and research there. Guy Bannister, from Index Corporation. Name all the deep things you can research if you really want to get into JFK. Oh, been lurking here for years. Here's a coffee. Morning from Norway. It's $100 for a coffee in Norway. I want to look up knock now. Thank you, Sid Vicious. That's awesome, dude. Yeah, so interesting interesting stuff going on with then you get into some of these more these declassified units that were into a lot of more. This guy was one of the CIA's top assassins, David Sanchez Morales, right here, guys. So it's Norway money. It's like $8, right? Thanks. Norway. What's Norway dollar called? A knock? Norwegian krone to US dollar. Okay, so let's do $8 is 70. No, it's a little more than $8. It's like $10, man. $12, $11, 100. Oh, there we go. 11.21. Nope, you're all wrong. With what YouTube takes out, it's probably like, yeah, $8 at the end of that. So I guess you are right. Cool. Thank you. Yeah, Lee Harvey Oswald knew this guy, David Ferry. Lee Harvey Oswald went to the Marines. He was kind of an outcast there, didn't really fit in. After his tour, just before he turned 20 in October 1959, I don't even know if he was done with his military service. He defected and left to Russia. He taught himself Russian, and he spent 2 days in Fort Worth with his mother, and then embarked on a ship to New Orleans, to Le Havre, France, and immediately traveled to the United Kingdom. Arriving in Southampton on October 9th, he told officials he had $700 and planned to stay for 1 week before proceeding to a school in Switzerland. However, on the same day, he flew to Helsinki. In Helsinki, he checked in at the Hotel Torny, room 309, then moved to Hotel Klaus Kirky, room 429. He was issued a Soviet visa on October 14th. Oswald left Helsinki by train the following day, crossed the Soviet border at Vinalka, and arrived in Moscow on October 16th. His visa, valid only for a week, was due to expire on October 21st. Almost immediately after arriving, Oswald informed his interest guide of his desire to become a Soviet citizen. When asked why by the various Soviet officials he encountered, all of whom, by Oswald's account, found his wish incomprehensible, he said that he was a communist and gave what he was described as a diary as a vague answers about Great Soviet Union. Right, so they didn't give any. He didn't give specifics, but I don't know. It's really interesting. It's really interesting. He defected to the Soviet Union. They kind of knew something was up with him, and there was allegations that he was hired as like a sheep dipped that he was that this was part of his sheep dipping or whatever, that he didn't work out as an agent. So they sent a bunch of these guys to Moscow under this project. And some of them some of them had an actual intelligence to try to, I think, exchange to get deeper inside, German intelligence. And I mean, not German intelligence. I'm seeing German right here. They were trying to get inside Russian intelligence, and they think there's a whole bunch of theories about what Oswald was doing over there, and whether he was a CIA agent at the time, or whether that he was just being, followed by the CIA because they knew about him, and he was like someone in their web or vicinity. But anyways, he defected from the Soviet Union and came back across the border. Like, I think he swam across the river to escape, and he came back and to the U.S. and he soon settled in the Dallas and Fort Worth area, and that's kind of near where his mother and his brother lived. And he began a manuscript or whatever, but he gave up on that project. And then he met this guy who was a Russian immigrant, and it was an unlikely friend, but this guy was helping him out and talking to him. But he was a petroleum geologist and businessman who was business connections with George H.W. Bush. It turns out. So this guy had George H.W. Bush in his diary, and I talk about this. They don't talk about this part of it on Wikipedia, but if you go to my page, you can find this. This is talked about in right here under George de Mohrenschildt on the JFK page. If you go in the description, And George de Mohrenschildt was this petroleum geologist and a professor who befriended Lee Harvey Oswald and introduced him to the people that got him the job at the School Book Depository building. So they introduced Marina Oswald and Lee to Ruth Payne. Ruth Payne is the one who got them the job. And really interesting that George de Mohrenschildt kind of acted as this connection man or handler behind the scenes. And it's interesting that he had George H.W. Bush in his right in his notebook when he died. So he was going to testify to the Warren Commission, right? And he was supposed to testify to the Warren Commission, to not the Warren Commission, to the House Select Committee on Assassinations. So for those of you who don't know, the House Select Committee on Assassinations was this thing that existed briefly in the late 1970s because of all the allegations and all the conspiracy theories, and just nobody believed this, so they wanted to have a big investigation to get to the bottom of all these conspiracy theories. And so they enacted this the House Select Committee on Assassinations, right? And this House Select Committee on Assassinations was established in 1976 to investigate the assassinations of John F. Kennedy and Martin Luther King Jr. And also, I don't think they investigated Bobby Kennedy, but we know what happened with Bobby Kennedy now. That there was an extra shot, that the shot that killed him was shot from behind, and that it was the security guard that escorted him into the kitchen that was later found out to be a connection of some CIA agents named George Joanides. So let's see, George Joanides. Yeah, so this guy, George Joanides, and he's connected to the JFK assassination as well. He's this CIA guy from JM Wave and the Cuba operation. And he was the chief of psychological warfare. So he's the one that understood, how to implant a fake story about, that it was this hypnotized patsy Sirhan, and that the CIA had been experimenting with Manchurian candidates and their use in assassinations. And when he saw the woman in the polka dot dress, he went into that trance and began firing the gun that they gave him. And meanwhile, the security guard escorting RFK into the bathroom. So let's look up RFK assassination autopsy. Anyways, this House Select Committee on Assassinations, and you can find the autopsy report and read it and see that he was shot from behind, the final shot that killed RFK. But anyways, there was so much controversy. They later found out that the assassination of Martin Luther King Jr. was part of a conspiracy, that there was this, again, CIA-connected drug and gun running ring that was running out of Florida, and that the guy who shot King was connected with that ring, and basically being run by this other guy who was, pretty much a very sketchy character. Who's the other guy that I gotta look this up, because I saw this whole thing about the conspiracy, and you won't find a lot of it on YouTube. It won't really talk about it. But James Earl Ray, right? Yeah, James Earl Ray, the guy that he was hanging out with. Ray was convicted. He was hanging out with this other guy who was very interesting. Had some very interesting CIA activity. But anyways, there was this whole investigation that was supposed to get to the bottom of all this, and here we are 2021, and we still don't have the files on the JFK assassination. Biden's still, refusing to release them. And it's pretty crazy. So in any case, this the Warren Commission was this original commission that was supposed to investigate the assassination of JFK back in right after the assassination, and it was run by a guy named Alan Dulles. Alan Dulles was the enemy of JFK. He hated JFK, and he should have been the person who was he was head of the CIA, and he should have been the person who was investigated, for the assassination. And then a future president, Gerald Ford, was also part of, this commission. So, hey, come on, the Senator Ford. Hey, Senator Ford, come on here and help us lie and cover up this crime of the century, and you could be elected president. And he was, ladies and gentlemen. This organization, and I want to talk about the deep state organization that was really behind a lot of this stuff, because this is a lot of the subsequential players on the surface. How it started with organized crime coming out of Cuba and the anti-Cuban operation, and how they recruited people within the media to lie for them and become part of this CIA construct fabric of what shaped the American reality on this, and what they won't talk about. It's always just fluff. But anyways, let's get into some of these other guys. George Joannides was an interesting guy. All these JM Wave guys, just research any one of them. Ted Shackley. I won't tell you their names on here. They'll link back to here. Ted Shackley right there. He's the white ghost. So nobody ever saw what this guy looked like. He was like refused to be photographed. And there's the only photograph they have of him, and it's from the side. It's just really weird. He hated being photographed. But in any case, JFK, the team that probably converged on the assassination itself was called, I think, Alpha 66. And although they alleged that their connections with the French cartel and a guy named Bill Harvey, Harvey, JFK. This guy, Bill Harvey. Bill Harvey, armed and dangerous. He apparently hired some French assassins, according to one theory. But it doesn't matter who pulled the trigger, I suppose it does at the end of the day if you could prove it at this point. But there's been so much CIA obfuscation and cover up of evidence that I think that would be extremely difficult. The entire limousine, the presidential limousine, was cleaned and sanitized, and all the bullet holes repaired. Lots of interesting, evidence cover-ups. And then all these guys, we have a future president here, at the guy who hated JFK, that, JFK pretty much fired and said that he was going to shatter the CIA into a million pieces because of how corrupt it was and what he found out it was doing with organized crime and these cartels and these assassination squads, and the Bay of Pigs operation. So, which JFK shut the CIA down on the Bay of Pigs operation, and they lost a lot of guys at the Bay of Pigs. And after the Bay of Pigs, all these CIA guys just went, rogue, and I think they were pissed at JFK for what he did at the Bay of Pigs and the operation there. So the Bay of Pigs operation was called actually Operation Zapata. And it's interesting that the Zapata Oil Company was George Bush's oil drilling operation. So yeah, the Bay of Pigs is key to the whole thing. and the key intelligence and platform people that set up the platform for all this to go down. And one of those people is George H.W. Bush, future president, and he was actually appointed. He was appointed the head of the CIA during the House Select Committee on Assassinations. You look up when when George H.W. Bush headed the CIA, only person to be head of the CIA, vice president, and president, right? But he was head of the CIA in 1976, right when the House Select Committee on Assassinations was established, and they needed to have a guy who wasn't in the CIA and didn't have any connections to the CIA to sort of clean the agency up and figure out what was going wrong. And so that was their guy, was George H.W. Bush. But little did people know that George H.W. Bush, ran that Operation Zapata. He ran, and then there's people that think that Bush was in Dallas outside the Texas School Book Depository building that day. And there's that controversial picture. I don't think that's him, but whatever. I think there's more important, educational background if you look into these companies. Clay Shaw, all that stuff with that the Garrison investigation into JFK uncovered. But these assassination squads that trained to carry out covert assassinations, a lot of these assassination tactics and stuff were developed by this man right here, actually, David Sanchez Morales. He's kind of like the guy who developed a lot of this. He taught sleight of hand and like shooting methods, like how to fire a gun firing guns discreetly. And they studied other assassinations where these kinds of things happened, and they really thought about this stuff hard to come up with plans for how to get away with this kind of stuff. But as the autopsy report will show in the RFK case, that they can't always cover up the evidence. But yeah, it's really interesting. The United States still won't release all these files. You get the media the media's complicit in the cover up and the continuation of the lies that have been told for years and years, that have covered up the CIA's complicity. And it's time to really know why. And one of the things I thought was interesting is that E. Howard Hunt, who was a good friend of George H.W. Bush's, on his deathbed, he even defended Bush, didn't really talk about the Bush connection in the whole JFK assassination. He blamed it on Cord Meyer, a guy named Cord Meyer Jr., right? So he said that Cord Meyer was mad because Cord Meyer's wife, he was a CIA agent, and Cord Meyer's wife was cheating on him with JFK. JFK was, tagging everyone, including this CIA's official's wife, which, according to E. Howard Hunt, there's his wife. Yep. JFK's like, thank you, I'll take that. And he was like, not happy about that. I'm going to kill you. That's what happened to E. Howard Hunt. Yep. It wasn't a huge, conglomerate of all these oil men. Byrd, the Bush, Texas oil men, I think apparently Johnson was there, and like, according to his mistress, Johnson went to this meeting, right? So Lyndon Johnson, right? So Lyndon B. Johnson, very interesting guy, became president. He was the vice president to JFK. JFK picked him so that there'd be a difference of opinion, so that they get the pick. They'd have a guy on a really different approach, so that they didn't always agree on everything. But Lyndon hated Kennedy because he felt like he should be president. And really interesting stuff going on in some of these pictures. There was one of these pictures where the guy's giving him a wink, and there's all these weird signs and gestures going on behind the scenes. And but Johnson, Lyndon B. Johnson is an interesting guy if you research the real secret history. And the real secret history of Lyndon Johnson revolves around a guy named Mac Wallace. Wallace. Again, you won't find these connections unless you've done the research. I don't know. It's like you won't know this stuff. I'm just barely remembering it all. I was dreaming all about it and connecting all these dots in my head, and I woke up and I couldn't sleep, and I'm like, I got to do a stream on this. It's November 22nd. It's been almost 60 years. People need to know what the deal is with Malcolm Wallace. So this is Malcolm Wallace. Malcolm Wallace was JFK's personal hitman and dirty deed guy. And apparently Wallace was one of the second gunmen in the other window of this, and that he got out of there before Oswald, and then they caught Oswald on the stairs and framed him. And I don't know, but I don't know if I believe that, but I know that Malcolm Wallace was was he Skull and Bones? Is that really Malcolm Wallace next to Bush in that famous photo? No way. That's Malcolm Wallace. No way. It looks like him. Holy crap. This guy, get a better copy of this than that. I know I have one. That guy. Yeah, there's Bush right there in the Skull and Bones Society. Interesting. I'll have to look that up. But Johnson had this guy Malcolm Wallace doing all this dirty work for him, and then Tippit, the guy who everyone said he looked like JFK, and apparently he was the CIA's body double for JFK. They sent the body double to serve in the autopsy photos so that they could fake the photographs. They had to mutilate the corpse to make it look like to fake the gunshot wounds in the autopsy report. That was not done at the conventional hospital. That was brought to a very an interesting other hospital. Yeah, so it's the left window that Oswald was supposedly shooting from. I got to go to Dealey Plaza. I've never been. I've never actually been to Texas. Sometime I got to go to Texas. I was planning to take a ride down to Texas, but I never did. That might be in the repertoire at some point. But man, I don't know what. There was this big protest down there with the QAnon people or something, but it doesn't get any real media coverage, and they prop up all these fake groups and of clowns, and that's what they report on, and that's what they tell people exists, and it's just crazy how the real truth and all the deep history gets swept under the rug with all these interesting players. Yeah, that is Malcolm Wallace, and other people have made that connection. But then the guys on the Umbrella Man and this Cuban guy with the radio in his pocket. He's got like a communicator in his pocket. It's really weird. They got like the old style communicators, this big ass radio, and these guys were standing right in the corner. Yeah, but anyways, who is the woman that testified that Sturgis showed up, or and then drove her from Miami to New Orleans, and then to Dallas. So there's all these connections. 554 Camp Street, New Orleans. Oh, this was the old building. So they had this was like the old FBI building, pretty much. It was the, yep, in Oliver Stone's movie. Here it is. There they are at 554 Camp Street in New Orleans. And that's where Guy Bannister's office operated out of, and the Fair Play Community, Hands Off Cuba, the Fair Play for Cuba Committee leaflets and flyers were found in his office by Garrison's investigation, which Lee Harvey Oswald was seen handing out these same flyers just weeks before, months before the assassination. The Fair Play for Cuba. There he comes.
Now the prisoner wearing a white sweater.
Let me have it. I want it.
Being let out by Captain Fritz. There is the prisoner.
There is Lee. He's been shot. He's been shot. Lee Oswald has been shot. There's a man with a gun. It's absolute panic. Absolute panic here in the basement of Dallas Police Headquarters. Detectives have their guns drawn. There is no question about it. Oswald has been shot at point-blank range, fired into his stomach.
He is shot. He is shot. Oswald.
It is Oswald. Was that the man that shot the man, or do you know?
That is the man that shot the man.
There he is.
Yep, so that's Jack Ruby in the Dallas police station in the basement because he brought them donuts and coffee. And got that shot in for the cameras. Pew, pew. And then the patsy was dead. So people couldn't look into Lee Harvey Oswald's history and how he was a sheep dip, Bush-controlled clown for the CIA. So the Bush connection is really interesting. It brings it all together because he's head of the Operation Zapata with Zapata Oil Company and the Scorpion 2 oil rigs that were running. As cover for the Bay of Pigs operation. This whole oil network and what they were doing with the Bay of Pigs, they were a staging platform. So all the supplies and stuff and the Navy that did the Bay of Pigs invasion basically took off from George Bush's oil platform, which is like crazy because I remember playing with that oil platform G.I. Joe toy when I was a kid, not realizing it was, the special operations. His future president, George W. Bush, aboard, right with his daddy, touring some, I don't know if they went on the ship to the actual oil platform and this is them there or just near a ship dock or some big piece of equipment right here in the background. There's Bush and Ford. Again, this is like, it's crazy that these connections, we know that there are all these top level connections behind the JFK assassination, but nobody talks about this stuff. It's like, you're not allowed to. And if you help us cover it up, well, like Gerald Ford did, you become president, or if you become the future, sensational news reporter like Dan Rather, right? Dan rather not tell you the truth.
And Mrs. Kennedy stood up immediately. The president.
Anyways, let's Malcolm Wallace. Really interesting guy. I want to find if we can find his Mac Everett Wallace. Yes. Economist. He fatally shot John Douglas Kinser in the clubhouse of an Austin golf course owned by Kinser. So he's alleged to have participated in the assassination of President Kennedy. And yeah, he was one of those guys. And this wasn't the first time he did some crazy, outrageous stuff. You know, he showed up at the scene with a pistol and shot. Who did he shoot? Immediately after the first shot, golfer outside observed the man on side only 30 shots. Yeah, he would just carry out assassinations apparently, but this isn't the whole. Bar McClellan, yeah, he Cliff Carter. Yeah, this is another interesting guy, Cliff Carter. And the death of Marshall, according to McClellan, Wallace fired one shot at Kennedy from the 6th floor of the Texas and then ran to escape. Yeah, that's the guy that said that he that Wallace shot from the Texas other building, right? And he stated that fingerprints and an eyewitness placed Wallace at that location, and that Wallace could be seen as the shadowy figure in photos of the building. So 2016, Joan Mellon said that the fingerprint claim was discredited. Yeah, it's just been so long. And then apparently they did testing on Oswald and found that he didn't fire a gun too. And then they switched or changed that evidence around. That was another one that I read about. They do is they put this nitrate testing right for skin. The FBI has this strips, and they put these strips on that pull out it's like tape or whatever, and then they just pull it out and then they test it and they see, like, if you fired a gun, you'll have nitrates on your skin from the gunpowder, or if you lit off fireworks. But they leave this. So if they want to trace you to doing, this is what they test for. At the airport, they test a lot for, they'll test your laptop, or sometimes with this, they'll wipe it, like wipe your laptop, and they test for nitrates. And they have dogs that sniff for nitrates as well to see if you've been playing with explosives or gunpowder or anything that can blow up a plane or stuff like that. But yeah, interesting that Malcolm Wallace, they don't talk much about him here, but you'll find more about him on the Spartacus educational site if you look up Malcolm Wallace. And Wallace. Damn, I'm gonna be tired at work. I'm just like up and I can't sleep. What time is it? 7:04. So in any case, yeah, this is I should probably start getting ready for work soon. And let me see. Anyone else have yeah, I can't go to bed, dude. I have to go to work. I wish I could go to bed. I just can't sleep. It's crazy that they got away with all this, dude. Nobody talks about it. The news won't report it. There's no like stories linking it all up, or I thought when this stuff came about Bush, it would be like a bombshell. But it's like, we don't want to touch it, and the media is just like, nope, didn't happen. He didn't call the FBI and say he knew who killed the president, and report that he wasn't in Dallas. He was somewhere else. He was at the Kiwanis Club in Fort Worth giving a speech to a bunch of old people that won't remember who he was or that what he was there for or what he talked about, right? The Alzheimer. He gave a speech at the Alzheimer's Club. I don't know. But apparently there was this big meeting with Johnson and Johnson's widow, Lyndon Johnson's widow. No, mistress. Sorry, the mistress, not the widow. Mistress speaks about the assassination, and you'll find it right here. This is Madeline Brown, right? Madeline Brown is the one that said that Johnson went to this meeting, and they said after he said that she wasn't allowed to go into the meeting, but when he came out, he said, "We're going to get that son of a bitch," and she knew he was talking about Kennedy, and apparently these oil men and these rich bankers and petroleum engineers that befriended Lee Harvey Oswald and got him that job at the school book depository building were not involved, and that we don't need to look into, any deeper into the assassination at all. Don't worry about it. That looked like. In any case, yeah, I'll probably update this page on my website with some more stuff, and I got to change these fonts and stuff. So I'll get working on that, guys. But thank you for watching, and I appreciate the super chats and everything. Yeah, I'm getting tired too, man. I agree. But yeah, it's November 22nd, guys, and hopefully you do some investigation and leave some comments around on different channels or different things. Call into shows today and talk about it. I don't know. Try to spread the word and be like, hey, did you guys know that Operation Zapata was the Bay of Pigs operation, and that the Zapata Oil Company was Bush's first business after he, left Skull and Bones and didn't work for the CIA and didn't, go into a CIA front company like most of those rich college kids from Yale do when they leave their, secret societies. All right, guys, we meet in secret. Thanks, guys. Have a good one. Here's a StreamYard link if you want to hang out, talk in the background while I make breakfast. Let's hang out. Tell me why I'm wrong. Come on and debunk me. Be like, no, there was no conspiracy. There's nothing in those assassination files that they won't release after 70, 80 years. Sorry, 60 years. 60 years later. Fidel Castro is still alive, though. Let's see. Fidel Castro. Nope, he died. He's not alive anymore. He died in 2016. Why did I not hear about this? What the hell? Whatever. I figure it's like a long time. He would be like 90 if he was still alive. I was just thinking about that earlier. It's crazy how they don't even give you news about any of this stuff. Like, we don't want you even looking up Fidel Castro. Never mind George Joanides or Gordon Campbell. That's another one. There's another CIA agent that you should look up, Gordon Campbell. Here's Gordon Campbell and George Joanides at the Ambassador Hotel the night that RFK was assassinated. It's on in a couple pictures and film of them there. And apparently there's a David Sanchez Morales was there at the hotel that night too. Really interesting convergence of people to all be at the hotel that night. All these CIA thug, gangster, mafia people types. Craziness, dude. Greetings from Portugal, man. I'm surprised this isn't banned in other countries. Thanks, guys. Have a good night. And have a good day or good night, depending on where you are in the world.